The absolute rule set by God declares that all life has an end. Under that law, a hooded figure gives an order for the guards to escort the saint away, leaving Johann to be dealt with separately. Johann lies on the ground as the guards move past him. He calls out to Gretel while she is taken farther away, watching helplessly as the person he loves is separated from him. Gretel turns back once, meeting his gaze. Even so, she holds to the thought that if life could begin again, she would choose it the same way. The story opens on that same idea of starting over. Johann sits at a table inside a bar, facing several opponents in a card game. Tension hangs in the air as the game progresses. One of the opponents grows visibly irritated while Johann calmly draws his card. Moments later, an angry shout erupts in the bar. Johann has won big once again. This time he had gone all in. Some of the onlookers question the instincts and nerves it must take to bet that way. Others speculate about his background, wondering what kind of monk he might be. Johann lets out a gentle laugh, which gradually hardens into something louder and more careless. He apologizes for getting carried away after defeating the best gambler in the bar. The apology does nothing to calm the situation. The opponent refuses to let it end there and pushes forward more money, cash taken from other gamblers earlier. Johann accepts without resistance and agrees to continue if the opponent insists. He raises the bet again. The result is immediate. Johann wins decisively once more. Shock spreads across his opponent's face as disbelief sets in. The opponent struggles to understand how Johann's bets are always perfectly timed and demands to see his hand. Suspicion quickly turns into accusation. Johann denies any cheating, insisting it was nothing more than luck. He maintains that there were no marked cards, no switches, and no crude tricks that could be spotted so easily. The accusation hangs unanswered. Johann does not elaborate further. Instead, his attention shifts to a notice posted on the wall. A wanted poster warns of a demon-possessed individual labeled the Hero Killer. Realizing the danger of drawing attention, Johann decides not to push his luck. He stands and announces that he is finished, presenting himself casually as a traveling monk. He gathers the money he won, treating it as nothing more than funds for his journey. Before he can leave, his opponent slaps his hand away and demands to know what kind of monk he really is. The man grips the side of his own face, anger boiling over, and insists that Johann reveal how he cheated. He dismisses the idea that it could be explained away as divine favor. Johann responds calmly, treating the accusation as a poor joke. He remains composed and offers to listen, as if humoring a confession rather than defending himself. Without warning, a massive spike erupts from the ground and shatters the table between them. The opponent turns hostile, already intent on killing Johann the moment he loses. The man's body begins to change. His fingers crackle as something takes hold of him, driven by the cost he has already paid. He said that he'll make Johann suffer instead, same as the gamblers he skewered before. The transformation continues, fueled by a completed contract. Sorcery activates, limited to a single minute. From behind him, a giant form rises, its body wrapped in thorns like living armor. Panic spreads through the bar. People scatter, shouting warnings about demon possession and calling for an exorcist. The creature displays its power openly. A demon manifests, the source of the pact, offering strength in exchange for blood. The price is never avoided. Some patrons urge Johann toward the exit as the thorns surge again, calling out to him as they flee. The danger closes in quickly. Johann refuses to run. He recognizes that anyone outside would be caught and killed. Instead, he grips the edge of the shattered table as the demon presses its attack. The creature spreads its power through the floor, sending massive thorns tearing through the ground and splintering what remains of the bar. The demon blankets the entire floor in spikes, confident nothing could survive within it. Johann remains clinging to the table as it rises with the thorns. He emerges untouched. The demon recoils in shock, unable to understand how Johann avoided the attack or how he knew where it was safe to stand. Johann stays composed, even continuing to eat from a plate of pasta amid the destruction. The demon's frustration explodes into another violent surge of thorns, crushing the plate in an attempt to break his calm. Johann evades the attack once more. He does not retreat, instead enduring each strike as if daring the creature to succeed. The demon grows increasingly agitated, unable to reconcile how Johann continues to avoid every spike, even when attacks come from blind angles. It becomes clear this is not simple reflex. Driven to desperation, the demon unleashes another wave of thorns. This time Johann is struck from behind. For a brief moment, it appears the attack has landed. Then the demon senses something is wrong. Johann draws his gun, turns calmly, and fires. The shot hits its mark. The demon reels from the impact, its confidence finally broken. The confrontation carries the weight of repetition, as if Johann has fought this same battle countless times before. From outside, a guard peers through a shattered window and takes in the scene. The urgency is immediate. The captain must be called. There is no longer any doubt. The figure standing amid the ruined bar is the hero killer. In the Holy Enclatia teaching nation, within the second diocese, Johann moves through the streets as an announcement from the holy capital echoes across the city. The message warns of an unprecedented crisis now threatening the world. Crowd chatter swells beneath the broadcast. Johann notices a child stumble and fall as people press closer together, confused by the sudden gathering. Some speculate about the cause, while others recognize it as a rare transmission from the holy capital. The announcement reports that another demon-possessed individual appeared in the second diocese the previous night. Violence and looting continue both within the nation and beyond its borders. Although the church conducts purges daily, their efforts cannot keep pace with the growing numbers. It is revealed that the strongest exorcist died a month earlier, leaving morale at its lowest. The crowd reacts with anger and fear. Some direct their hatred toward the hero killer, blaming him for the rise in demon possession. A priest counters their unrest by assuring them that the Lord will save the world through divine rites that banish darkness. The mood shifts sharply when the announcement declares that a saint will offer herself to the Lord as a martyr. Shock ripples through the crowd before turning into celebration. People whisper in awe, wondering if this is truly the saint spoken of in legends, one said to appear only once every century. They marvel at the chance to witness her existence firsthand. She is described as the chosen one among all the faithful. In honor of the ceremony, a message from the saint is promised to the people. Johann, however, turns away before it begins, showing no interest in staying. To him, the spectacle holds no value. No matter how she is adorned as a saint or martyr, she remains a sacrifice all the same. As he walks on, a presence addresses him. Black, swirling smoke gathers nearby, forming into the shape of a woman. She notes how close they are to the holy capital and warns him to put in more effort or risk boring her. They face one another. She observes that Johann intends to save the woman and addresses him as sovereign. Johann acknowledges her, calling her Mephi. She remarks on his indulgence the night before, accusing him of using her sorcery for gambling. She finds it difficult to reconcile the infamous wanted man, the one who slew the nation's hero, with someone who formed a pact with her. Johann treats it lightly, viewing it as harmless amusement, and maintains that haste only leads to death. He understands what lies ahead. Once they reach the holy capital, the confrontation with the church will be direct, and reclaiming the captive saint will demand everything. When that moment comes, resources will be consumed rapidly, and there will be no turning back. Johann notes that they are nearing the gates and resolves not to fail this time. As he walks through the station, people glance at him with confusion as he appears to speak to no one. Mephi cautions him to stop, aware that to others he looks like a lunatic muttering to himself. Johann reacts plainly, unfazed by the stares, aware that the exchange began with her. An announcement echoes through the train station, instructing all passengers in the second diocese that the holy capital train is about to depart and directing them to platform 1. Johann and Mephi move with the flow of the crowd. Mephi questions the decision to take the train, noting that surveillance will be tight. Johann accepts the risk, recognizing there is no other viable route. For now, his face remains unknown, and no one recognizes him as the hero killer. As he walks, his focus turns briefly to Gretel. He holds to the certainty that he will get her back someday. Unseen by him, a figure watches from the rooftop above. Without warning, a spear tears through his body. Johann reels in shock as more spears rain down, piercing him again and again. A woman reveals herself as the attacker, declaring herself the hammer. She announces that Johann will no longer be allowed to roam freely and confirms that he has been identified as the hero killer. Johann recognizes them immediately as exorcists, enforcers. They belong to the Ministry of Inquisition, the Exorcism Enforcement Bureau. The woman identifies herself as Claudia Battisel, senior enforcer, leading the second diocese task squad. She lands firmly on the ground below, asserting authority as she closes in. She accuses Johann of planning to disrupt the rite and presses him to confess while he still can. Johann questions how she identified him as the hero killer. Claudia explains that it began as a hypothesis. A report from the previous night described a demon-possessed appearing in the diocese. When her unit arrived, they found that another demon-possessed had already killed it. She notes that this was not an isolated incident. Similar cases have surfaced repeatedly since the hero's death a month earlier, giving rise to rumors within their ranks of a single figure responsible. She intends to confirm whether Johann truly is that figure. As she prepares to act, Claudia spins her blood vow armament, the Rend Wind Spear. The weapon shifts into maximum output, warping the air around it. Johann reacts with visible surprise at the force of the wind generated by the spear. Claudia identifies it as an exorcism art, a miracle granted by the Lord. She hurls the Rend Wind Spear toward Johann, executing the covenant. The blood vow activates, invoking the power of the flying leg spirit and unleashing wind manipulation at full force. Johann's body is torn apart in an instant, shattered by the force of compressed air as the spear strikes. In the final moment before his consciousness fades, he recognizes the pressure shaping the attack and understands that Claudia is a winged user. His body scatters across the ground. A realization forms, unfinished, before everything cuts off. Claudia turns toward her task squad. Shock is visible across their faces. She demands to know why they are frozen and orders them to aim for the limbs with their spears. One of the men hesitates and apologizes. Claudia states that body strengthening is the only technique available to them and commands their attention. Before she can continue, something begins to tick. Her gaze drops to Johann's hand. A watch-shaped seal is embedded there, its hand spinning faster than reversing. The squad looks on in disbelief as Johann's scattered remains begin to pull together. Time itself rewinds. His body reforms piece by piece, restoring what had been destroyed. Claudia cannot understand how sorcery is being used after death. The contract is fulfilled. Time turns back. The scene resets to an earlier moment in the Holy Enclatia teaching nation's second diocese. The same announcement echoes through the streets, warning of an unprecedented crisis. The same crowd chatter fills the air. The child who fell earlier appears again, pointing out a man cutting in line. Before the protest can finish, the man shoves the child aside. Johann steps in, steadying the child before he falls, then confronts the man directly. Mephi notes that they have returned to this timeline once more and asks what the plan is. Johann now understands that the exorcists are positioned around the station. Mephi confirms it, mentioning that a small squad is already nearby, and warns that reaching the capital will inevitably lead to another confrontation. Johann acknowledges this without hesitation. With less than a month remaining before the divine offering, Johann considers leaving matters untouched and heading straight for the holy capital. Even so, his thoughts linger on the woman who killed him. His expression hardens as possession and resolve mix together. Later, inside a gun shop, a rifle is presented to him. The clerk questions whether Johann is a hunter. Johann confirms it and presents his license. Shortly after, he leaves the shop carrying the weapon. Sorcery is defined by the price demanded by a demon pact, a cost that varies greatly depending on the demon involved. Fire can be created. Matter can be reshaped. Power is lent from demon to human, and its output depends entirely on the demon's rank. Johann's contracted demon stands at the highest tier. The power granted to him allows time to rewind upon death. The rewind limit reaches back to the moment of the contract, up to 1 month earlier. The number of activations is unlimited. There is no immediate price to pay, at least for now. Mephi notes that with death-triggered rewind, sniping becomes the optimal approach. If the enemy's position is known, it is the fastest and safest method. Johann agrees. From his perspective, it is overwhelmingly unfair, leaving his enemies with no chance to resist. Johann stated that no matter how strong the enemies are, he come back with countermeasures from the future, then ambush. And he can redo it as many times as needed, an absolute first strike kill. Back then and then. Johann learned by dying over and over until he cleared it. They still don't know Johann's power is. Time rewinds so it never leaks. Same as always, kill the undefended targets. Just like a routine job. As he pulls the triggers, Johann's eyes widened in surprise, then pauses. Mephi asked him why is he spacing out. Did he lose his target? Did all the dying scramble his brain? But he said no. Johann found them already. He have eyes on the target, but Claudia is using a tornado to her task squad. All of them were circling with the tornado. Johann confused, he don't get what he is seeing. He wonder if that is the exorcist tornado. Was that the wind user's exorcism art? One man saw Johann at the top of one of a building. Johann wondered if it's a barrier maybe, but he's not sure. The wind and meat bags are blocking his shot. He can't hit the on he wants the most. There's no way they'd know about this. So he wondered why. No, more importantly, why are they acting differently than before? Then Claudia commanded the task squad to all charge. She sent them all flying towards Johann. Johann was shocked in disbelief. All task squad was flying very fast. Johann can't believe what he is seeing. When all of them landed, they straight ahead to Johann trying to seize him. Johann noticed that they don't have weapons and wondered what are they planning. He thinks that he needs to rewind. And then he shot himself with the rifle. And then the time seal works again. Time rewind passed again. Distant chatter familiar again. Widened in surprise, he thought that something's wrong and wondered what was it. He thinks that they should be waiting around the station like in Try 2. He knows that he rewind that time, it has to be some kind of mistake. He went to the shop again and purchased the rifle. And he will try again. As he aimed his rifle again, he saw once more that the task squad are coming at him again. He screamed in disbelief. The task squad are chasing him again. He shot himself again and rewind back the time. Johann walking in rush for him. This is unusual situation. The enemy is countering his sniping. He wondered how the enemy know that he is sniping and also his location. Johann considers whether the wing user could possess the same ability to rewind time. The idea is dismissed almost immediately. Both demon-possessed and exorcists are limited to a single ability. He briefly evaluates the power of the subordinates and reaches the same conclusion. Lower-ranking exorcists can barely manage body enhancement. His resolve hardens. 2 enforcers rush him barehanded. Johann notices the intent behind their movements. They are not trying to kill him. They want him alive. In that instant, he understands that sniping is no longer viable. His entire plan collapses. The station is no longer an option. As he searches for another route into the holy capital, one of the squad members comes at him from behind, moving faster than expected. Johann is seized and slammed down before he can even reach for his gun. He is restrained immediately. His mouth is gagged tight enough to prevent even the smallest movement. Johann realizes he cannot bite down or end it himself. Ahead of him, the task squad and Claudia hover above the ground, suspended by a violent spiral of wind generated from Claudia's weapon. Claudia observes him closely, noting the panic that finally surfaces on his face. She reacts with recognition, as if comparing him to someone she has already faced. Johann's eyes widen as confusion sets in. He struggles to understand what she is and how his position was discovered so easily. The explanation becomes clear. He has been under constant surveillance. 4 days, every movement toward the station has been tracked. Any deviation triggered an immediate response. Communication between them has been continuous. Johann realizes that throughout this entire attempt, he has been monitored without knowing it. Mephi's presence reaches him quietly. This is not the end. Johann has likely already sensed the truth himself. Their sorcery has been figured out. The realization hits hard. Mephi lays out the pattern. There is no proof, but the behavior aligns perfectly. Claudia's fixation on capturing Johann alive. The deliberate gag to stop him from biting his tongue. There is only one explanation. If Johann can reverse death, then they cannot allow him to die. Whether his first death was a mistake or intentional no longer matters. Johann rejects the idea that it was intentional, but the doubt lingers. He questions when and how they figured it out. Mephi offers no answers. With people like Claudia, such knowledge would be justified as divine will. Claudia leaves no room for escape. Johann's situation is sealed. The intent becomes clear. He will be imprisoned indefinitely, kept alive until his demon pact breaks. Torture will be prolonged and deliberate. This is punishment for killing the hero, and it will not end quickly. One of the squad members drags Johann forward. His hands are bound. His mouth remains sealed. As he is taken away, a voice surfaces in his mind. Someone calling out to him. Gretel's presence lingers there, quiet but unmistakable, anchoring him as everything else closes in. The thought lingers only for a moment before Johann acts. He drives the back of his head into the face of the man restraining him. The grip breaks. Johann surges forward, sprinting straight toward his bag. His intent is clear. He is not escaping. He is ending this attempt on his own terms, aiming for what he considers a proper outcome. Claudia and the task squad freeze as Johann reaches the bag. In the next instant, a violent explosion erupts, engulfing him completely. Claudia immediately understands what she is witnessing. Johann had prepared for this. It was a suicide bomb planned from the start. She recognizes the pattern too late. As his body is obliterated, time begins to reverse once more. The familiar pull of rewinding reality takes hold, dragging the moment backward. Before he disappears entirely, Johann's resolve remains unchanged. This will not stop him. He intends to face the exorcists again, cut down the one standing in his way, and reach the holy capital no matter how many times it takes. 1 year earlier, after Johann was sent to a monastery for reasons left unspoken, there was one person he could not tolerate. A girl approached him and called his name. She noticed his condition and focused on the wounds he carried, asking what had happened and whether he had fought again. She insisted on seeing the injuries and offered to tend to them herself. She looked like an angel and carried herself like a saint, showing concern even for someone who did not belong in that place. As she worked on his wounds, Johann abruptly pushed back against her presence. He rejected her care, made it clear he did not want to be touched, and dismissed her as nothing more than another sheltered girl. He wanted her gone, finding her attention clinging and unpleasant, and accused her of pretending she owned him. That moment stirred an older memory from the time she, Gretel, had been chosen as a sacrifice to God. The scene shifted back to the present as Mephi drew his attention. She commended him on how cleanly he had ended his life, unaware that he had been carrying a time bomb. She warned him not to be captured again and made it clear there would be no second chance. Johann accepted the warning without protest. They stood together in the space between lives, surrounded by turning cogs and suspended photographs. Mephi asked him where he intended to rewind time. She pointed out that if Johann tried to save the saint, Greta, he would have to pass through the station blockade, and the watches would detect him immediately. The enemy already understood that Johann rewound time after his death. Their goal was to capture him alive. If that happened, there would be no more retries and everything would end there. Johann weighed the situation carefully. He concluded that removing the wind user was the only way forward. Her subordinates were expendable, and the watches were non-combatants from other bureaus, but his own resources were limited. He had only 2 pistols and 2 time bombs. With that equipment alone, he questioned how victory was even possible. In a scenario like this, there seemed to be nothing he could do. Claudia's wind barrier, packed with spinning corpses, was effectively impenetrable. The wind scattered most incoming attacks, and colliding with that rotating wall of flesh would mean certain death. A direct assault would fail, and taking a position above would be no better. The wind vortex rose higher than the surrounding buildings, leaving no clear opening to exploit. Johann considered another angle and wondered if an attack from below could work. If he had access to mines, detonating them beneath the wind vortex might destabilize it. It would likely not be enough to kill her, but it could be enough to create an opening. He thought about planting time bombs underground, then dismissed it. The roads were reinforced with cement, making excavation pointless. Pitfalls would serve no purpose. Attacking from a manhole was also unworkable, since drawing her directly overhead would be nearly impossible. He moved on to the idea of an ambush. Striking at the exact moment of contact might allow him to take her down before she could react. That option collapsed just as quickly. Her subordinates would clog any approach, and the watch would detect him first, just as it had before. Improvised weapons were no solution either. They would not hit hard enough, even against lower-ranked enemies, and the wind would scatter debris into nearby civilians. Hostages were useless against zealots willing to trade lives to eliminate a heretic. Attacking while they slept or using poison would fail as well, with the watch intervening long before any result. Every option closed in on itself. There was no frontal assault, no ambush, no covert entry. That left him questioning what move remained. Rewinding far enough to escape the watch entirely was the last resort. He did not know how far back was safe, and repeating every step carried its own cost. Predictive surveillance and a fortified defense stood in his way. He needed a plan that could slip past both, deceive every enemy involved, and eliminate the wing user at the center. The image lingered in his mind, a towering tornado filled with the task squad, facing him and his limited supply of ammunition. The solution never matched the simplicity of the image. He noted the irony that Mephi appeared to already have something in mind. 12 hours earlier at the second diocese station, Claudia and the task squad stood on the rooftop, watching the suspected hero killer approach. Claudia observed the movement with interest, curious whether Johann truly possessed the ability to rewind time. One of the soldiers questioned whether capturing someone like him was advisable. Claudia remained confident. The countermeasures were prepared. Her exorcism, the coordinated efforts of the soldiers, the organization-wide surveillance, and the surrounding encirclement were all in place. The situation was sealed. Johann had reached checkmate. He would not be able to rewind, and alone he could not defeat the organization. Meanwhile, in the bar, the atmosphere was lively. People cheered as Johann played cards with gamblers, coins exchanging hands with quiet precision. Across the city, Claudia observed the situation with measured calculation. She considered the possibility that the hero killer had already died and returned, and that any plan he had might have failed. Rewinding time, she reasoned, could generate infinite possibilities, but if they crushed those possibilities at the source, Johann would have no chance of victory. She noted that they had modeled 378 different outcomes and checked each one. At that moment, surveyors reported seeing Johann distributing some of his gambling winnings to the demons he had previously defeated. Claudia remained confident, asserting that in every modeled scenario, they would prevail. The match, she concluded, was already over for the hero killer. The radio crackled to life. Observation Team N reported that Johann was on the move. Claudia inquired if he had noticed the watch, and the team confirmed he had not. Johann rampaged through the streets, accompanied by allies, demon-possessed individuals he had earlier bested in gambling and now summoned back in time. They announced themselves to the terrified crowd, declaring their nature as demons capable of silencing children. Panicked civilians fled, some calling for exorcists. The allied demons turned to Johann for guidance. He confirmed that the plan was unfolding perfectly, and they followed his instructions without hesitation. Johann reminded them not to bolt, and one ally noted that the advance alone would not be enough. He praised Johann's future psych trick, acknowledging its reliability, while warning that confronting a monster was costly and demanded payment. Suddenly, a soldier was thrown into the scene, caught in a tornado that spun him violently. Claudia called out, asking if Johann was indeed the hero killer. Confident, she declared that this would be the last line he would cross. Johann briefed his ally, identifying the approaching figure as the senior exorcist, and emphasized that the demon-possessed must stick to the plan. Claudia struck, commanding all units to charge and capture the hero killer alive. Soldiers surged forward, but Johann remained composed, unfazed by their approach. Mephi observed the unfolding strategy and recognized it as a refined version of the first tactic, this time supported with force rather than bare hands. Johann confirmed, noting that Claudia had formed a wind-whirl barrier and launched reinforced soldiers into the fray. As the soldiers closed in, their shouts filled the streets, urging each other to clear the nuisance and press Johann into action. Johann calmly held a round of ammo and tossed it into the air. One soldier froze, stunned by the casual throw. Johann called them forward, ready to dismantle their advance. He drew his two pistols, and the soldiers blinked in disbelief at the dual weapons. They urged each other to stop hesitating and attack, but Johann fired first. Shots rang out with precision, dropping soldiers one by one. When the first rounds were expended, he tossed another batch of ammo into the air, reloading swiftly under pressure. A soldier shouted to attack during the reload, but Johann finished them off before they could close the gap. From a distance, Claudia watched, her expression hardening. She noted his movements, unnervingly precise, as if he anticipated every action. Each shot was a headshot, every strike calculated, and she realized it could not be achieved through mere repetition of death alone. The tally of his rewinds, 139 times, flashed in her mind. Johann scanned the aftermath. The nuisance had been cleared, barely, with only 6 rounds remaining. He prepared to reload again, but the tornado swept the ammo into its spiral. Claudia showed no concern for collateral damage, expanding the whirlwind to engulf everything in its path. She called it the Tempest Barrier and pressed it forward. Johann recognized the efficiency in her approach. Mephi noted that Claudia's objective was simple: draw him into the vortex. Claudia taunted, noting she knew those were his last rounds, counting each one through the watch. Before she could finish, a massive thorn erupted from the ground, striking toward her within the tornado. Claudia intercepted it effortlessly, remarking that she still had another card to play. The demon-possessed ally crouched in the corner, astonished that his attack had been blocked. Claudia dismissed the assault as trivial. Tricks from lesser opponents could not ambush her, and ground attacks would not hinder her. The demon-possessed recoiled, recognizing their limitations. Claudia coldly recorded the attempt, noting that every local demon-possessed had been profiled. Johann addressed the ally holding the thorn, acknowledging that their options were nearly exhausted. The realization settled that there was little left they could do. The demon-possessed asked Johann what to do next. The ambush had failed, and the question of how to take Claudia down loomed over them. Doubt lingered, but Johann remained resolute, determined to execute his plan. He and the demon-possessed gripped the thorns, positioning themselves as they had prepared. Johann gave instructions to aim precisely and activated a pin inside the bag. He instructed patience, eyes fixed on the swirling tornado. Claudia laughed from within it, declaring the hero killer's defeat as certain. Johann waited, tracking the moment he had anticipated. Then he gave the order. The demon-possessed channeled his sorcery, usage time, all expended. Multiple thorns erupted from the ground again, piercing the tornado's vortex. Soldiers watched in shock. Claudia remained unharmed, but Johann took a hit, blood streaking his form. Inside the whirlwind, Claudia dismissed the attack as trivial, assuming it had been meant for her. She did not expect that the strike had struck Johann instead. The demon-possessed fell silent, concern etched in his stance. The tornado swept him closer to Johann, only for Claudia to punch him in the face, knocking him aside. Claudia believed Johann was finally cornered. She struck down at the demon-possessed while contemplating the stakes. If he escaped and she were defeated, she would not be able to face him. The demon-possessed crashed to the ground. Claudia panted, and the distant soldiers watched silently, caught between fear and anticipation. A radio crackled. A soldier instructed Claudia to look up. Above her, a pistol aimed directly at her. She was warned to move, but it was too late. The bullet struck, sending her falling. Pain and surprise registered as the round pierced her, and Johann's menacing smile appeared above the thorns, gripping the top. The demon-possessed strike had not been a miss, it had been calculated. Johann now targeted the narrowest opening, the line to her eye. Claudia froze, shocked by the precision and by the foothold he had claimed above, poised to strike from the sky. Claudia and the watch had been momentarily fooled. Johann had nearly risked his life just to play dead. Claudia questioned how he could still have ammo and assumed the wind had stolen his last rounds, believing he could not possibly fire again. But Johann knew the truth. His ammo had never been taken. He had waited, anticipating the moment it would reappear in the tornado. The plan was precise. Allow the ammo to be sucked into the vortex, then use the thorns to lift him up and reclaim it. By leaving the rounds seemingly within her control, he had lulled Claudia into a false sense of security. When the moment arrived, he threw his bag from above, and it exploded. The blast tore through the surroundings, scattering debris and taking the lives of many soldiers. Mephi remarked on the chaos, noting that while civilians remained safe, the destruction left no time to linger. Johann agreed, moving swiftly with her. Before they could leave, Claudia reached from the ground, grabbing his foot. She called him the hero killer and revealed a critical fact. Even he could not block the watch. Her words, "Answer check complete," confirmed it. She explained that the watch, now en route with intelligence, would expose Johann's history, patterns, and connections to their entire organization. The city would no longer be safe for him, and it would not end there. Claudia warned that the strongest exorcists, including the Grand Exorcist who had once fought alongside the hero, would act with tailored counters. Even if Johann rewound time or defeated the Grand Exorcist, the higher ranks would ensure he faced insurmountable obstacles. She declared that his path led inevitably to hell, and then she died. Johann, undeterred, was already aboard the train after the battle. He spoke quietly to Mephi, preparing to descend into the next layer of challenges. From the start he had been ready. Meanwhile, far from the noisy streets, the holy city's most guarded place stands in silence. The isolated sanctuary, a sacred zone under the full control of the Ministry of Inquisitions. Inside the Grand Exorcist's quarters, a guard arrives with urgent news. The man waiting for him remains calm, almost as if he already knows what is coming. The hero killer has reached the holy city, or at least, it will happen soon. The details are still unclear, but the signs are there. The second parish was breached the night before. Search efforts are being pushed harder than ever. Intel gathered at great risk is now in full use. Checkpoints around the station are tightened. Patrols fill the streets. Wanted posters are updated and spread across the city. The security net is nearly flawless. Even so, if the hero killer reaches this base, the thought barely finishes before the unknown man moves on. He already knows the others are busy dealing with a cult elsewhere. If the hero killer shows up here, then the task will be handled personally. As if to prove his point, magic forms in the air, shaping crystal figures like angels made of glass. Anger simmers beneath his calm. The hero killer shattered their comrades. To him, this is not just a hunt. It is personal. And what kind of decoration the intruder will become is still undecided. But what no one realizes yet is that the hero killer is already closer than expected. At the final train stop in the holy city of Cardion, guards lock down the platform. Passengers are lined up. Tickets and bags are checked one by one. A criminal may be among them, and nothing is left unchecked. The search seems clean. No sign of the hero killer. One guard relaxes a little, thinking it is almost time for a shift change. He suddenly breaks into a run, leaving the others behind. Confusion spreads. The guards stare, unsure which unit he belongs to. One even thinks the runner might be a friend. That assumption lasts only a moment. Johann had prepared for this. The uniform he wears was taken the night before, stripped from an enforcer he defeated. Realization hits too late. The guards move, chasing after him, doubt turning into alarm. Someone voices the fear none of them want to say out loud. This might be the hero killer. But Johann is already ahead. He reaches into his bag and steadies himself. The goal now is simple. Blend in, be normal, be invisible. In seconds his form changes. An elderly man now walks through the crowd, slow and unremarkable. Mephi is told to stay alert. Watch their back. Mark anyone who feels off. Even by the lake, danger is close, but rushing now would ruin everything. Step by step, Johann moves deeper into the city. Closer to the target. Closer without being seen. And the guards never realize how close they came. Far from the streets and crowds, beyond the reach of normal people, lies a place cut off from the world. A fortress island that exists only to guard the saints. The isolated sanctuary. This is where Gretel is being held. Mephi reminds Johann not to rush. Reaching the holy city is already a major step. The holy city has everything. Wide parks. Busy markets. Even grand theaters that glow at night. For a moment, Mephi points it out, suggesting that since Johann can redo things, he could at least take the scenic route. But Johann stays focused. He's not here to sightsee. Not here to pray. This is not a trip. This is a job. The longer they stall, the worse it gets. And then his stomach betrays him. Hunger forces a pause. No matter the mission, fuel comes first. They head to the nearest place to eat. Johann finally sits down to a real meal. Something normal. He has been too busy preparing, too busy moving before the net closed. He slept through the train ride, saving energy where he could. Mephi comments on how inconvenient the human body is, always needing rest and food. She gets distracted again talking about the theater. Johann tells her to calm down. Food, after all, can be entertainment too. He promises a demonstration. What comes next is less strategy and more chaos. A simple cheese pizza arrives. Good on its own. Johann decides that is not enough. He adds field rations. Then an extra order of vanilla ice cream. Everything gets stacked together, pressed shut, and eaten without hesitation. To his surprise, it works. Strange but satisfying. He turns to Mephi, inviting her curiosity, reminding her that it is a shame she cannot taste it herself. Instead, he asks her to smell it. He even tells the staff to shut off the ventilation so she can get a better sense of it. That is when someone nearby notices something odd. Johann appears to be talking to himself. On the restaurant glass, faint and upside down, strange hand-shaped marks slowly appear. And just like that, the mood shifts. Night falls. Far from the city lights, the fortress island comes into view. The isolated sanctuary does not sleep. Guards line the walls. Patrol boats cut through the water. Every path is watched. From a hijacked fishing boat, Johann and Mephi observe everything through a scope. Walls surround the island. Patrols circle endlessly. The gate stands as the only clear entrance. But they still do not know where the saint is being held. That leaves 3 tasks. Infiltrate the base. Find and extract the saint. Do all of it without being seen. Johann considers the gate. A disguise worked before. Maybe it could work again. But Mephi shuts that down quickly. These guards are not careless station cops. A new face would never be waved through. Scaling the outer wall is no better. Even with gear, they would be exposed halfway up. Spotted before reaching the top. The problem is clear. If they could just get inside, the rest would be simple. A few retries. A few adjustments. Eventually they would find Gretel. But getting past that first wall, that is where everything could fall apart. Mephi suggests the simplest answer. Break straight through the front. Johann shuts that idea down immediately. They already know his face. They know his sorcery. And more than that, the sanctuary is never left unguarded. At least one grand exorcist is always assigned to the holy city and the saint. Facing that kind of enemy is not a fight. The moment their eyes meet, the only outcome would be death. He remembers what Claudia once warned him about. Among the heroes, the grand exorcist stood near the top. Their counters were made specifically for monsters like him. True monsters wrapped in legends. Beings who reshaped bedrock, burned enemies for miles away, and threw massive rubble across the horizon. They existed on a level far above ordinary exorcists. Johann has felt that terror before. and he wants nothing to do with it again, especially now when they are likely updated and prepared just for him. Then, something stirs the water. Johann pauses and listens. He looks around but sees nothing. He asks Mephi if she sensed it too. She checks carefully. No other boats. No swimmers. She has been watching the stern the whole time. No one is following them. It is probably just a fish hitting the hull. For a brief moment, the tension eases. That moment ends instantly. Someone is suddenly behind Johann, locking him in place from the boat itself. The intruder casually brings up the pizza Johann enjoyed earlier. Shock freezes him. An exorcist is already on board. Johann turns his attention to Mephi in disbelief. An enemy slipped past both of them. Mephi can only react too late. Johann knows what this means. Capture is worse than death. He prepares to end it and reset. But before he can, something sticky seals his mouth shut. He realizes it came from the man's weapon. The substance blocks his jaw completely. The exorcist calmly prevents him from biting down, knowing that a failed death would ruin everything. The man reveals himself as a senior exorcist. Not a hero, just a so-called humble enforcer. He explains that he and his companions are here for one reason only: to escort Johann. Johann finally understands the situation. Patrol boats surround them. There is no escape, no reset, no way out. The board is set, and this time it is checkmate. Johann is completely cornered. The senior exorcist calmly explains the resin sealing Johann's mouth. A special mix, sticky enough to trap a human like an insect. Escape is no longer an option. The man mocks him lightly, asking if they should restrain him fully and escort him straight into solitary. A weapon shifts behind Johann. In one sudden move, Johann breaks free just enough to grab the gun. He fires once straight into the sky. The senior exorcist barely reacts. He notes Johann's stubbornness, calling it pointless. From that angle, with a long weapon, Johann cannot hit anyone. It changes nothing. Johann glares back, burning with anger. He kicks the oar of the boat hard. The senior exorcist questions the move, amused, asking if Johann truly believes that will save him. The answer comes quickly. A blade flashes. Johann's leg is grazed. The game is over. The group makes their role clear. They are the hammer. The senior exorcist lays it out. Johann's target has always been the saint. His actions made that obvious. But he will never reach her. The saint is already dead. So is the enforcer who tried to stop Johann. There is nothing left to chase. Johann begins to mumble. His words are unclear, quiet, almost calm. The senior exorcist leans in, confused, trying to make sense of it. He assumes Johann is finally breaking. Finally giving up. This, he believes, is Johann's last moment of free air. The mumbling continues. Johann speaks of endless fights, endless deaths, battles against the strongest hero, taking from demons, running from exorcists who could not be faced head-on, preparing for moments like this, testing countless ways to die, learning one truth over and over again. For time rewind to work, sniping is key. And then it happens. Johann's head snaps violently. He is shot. Shock spreads across the boat. The senior exorcist freezes. No one fired. No one moved. Patrol boats surround them. There is no sign of another attacker. No balloon. No high ground. No possible angle. The shot came from directly above. Realization hits hard. The earlier gunshot was never a mistake. Johann fired into the sky on purpose. He waited. Calculated. Timed it perfectly. The bullet came back down. A falling shot. Johann sniped himself. The precision required is terrifying. Even a slight angle would have missed by dozens of meters. Even a perfect vertical shot would not fall straight back. And yet he did it. The senior exorcist can only accept one conclusion. Johann is insane. And worse, he planned for this too. The bullet doesn't just fall. Wind, drift, even subtle air currents can push it off course. But Johann accounted for everything. In a heartbeat, he reads the wind, calculates the fall point, and adjusts himself, and even the boat. Suddenly, everything he did before makes perfect sense. Then time folds back. The watch rewinds. 90 seconds before the exorcists made their move. Mephi calls out, pointing to what she knows Johann can do. He understands their abilities. The exorcists strike with their art of transparency. They erase themselves and their men, creeping closer. Johann, meanwhile, keeps his focus, noting how this is hell for a first-timer's kill. He has no clue how long they've been tailing him. But then, a sound. The clatter of the boat. Johann silently aims his rifle from behind and fires. One of the men flies off the boat. Another clings to the side, calling for his captain. Stealth is breaking. The other boats converge. The invisible advantage fades. The men realize Johann is already on the next loop, his movements calculated and relentless. Their coordinated attack collapses into chaos. As Johann's boat explodes, he leaps onto another. He notes their sloppy attack. Panic sets in now that their invisibility is gone. Mephi watches, noting his second talent. Skill and judgment honed over countless deaths and fights. A gift earned by endless trial. Johann moves from boat to boat, shooting with precision. In real time, Johann's second talent reveals itself. Combat sense far beyond any normal lifetime. A killer perfected by loops, death, and endless calculation. And the battle is far from over. Every shot calculated, every enemy accounted for. The man he shot before, the chameleon, still survives. Johann lines up his rifle again. He admires the ability of his opponent, acknowledging it, promising to put it to good use. Meanwhile, high in the guard tower, one of the men in the northeast sector reports over the radio that everything seems fine. A moment later, a clatter catches his attention. He asks his partner if he heard it too. The other shrugs it off, probably a bird. But through binoculars, the man freezes in shock. On the terrace below stands St. Gretel, the lovely martyr herself, looking out across the city. A priest approaches her, offering apologies for the repeated cancellation of ceremonies. Gretel brushes it off. There's nothing to be done. She knows something the others don't. The hero killer is closing in on the holy quarter, and everyone suspects she may be the target. Quietly, she decides to stay in her room until the situation settles. The priest agrees, adding that her chamber is the safest place in the sanctum. At the top of the castle, deep in the island's heart, it is surrounded by layers of security. Reaching her would require breaking through every defense. Not only that, the priest mentions she has been given a luxury attendant for her protection. Gretel raises an eyebrow, curious, but the explanation will come soon enough. The priest departs. Alone at last, Gretel exhales deeply, letting herself relax. She removes her robes and sinks into the comfort of her bed, thinking about Johann. Stupid. Reckless. Why is he doing this? She wonders what he is doing right now. And then, movement at the window. Johann appears, gun trained on the senior exorcist, the man who can become invisible. For a moment he freezes, realizing Gretel is truly here. He instructs the exorcist not to drop invisibility yet, but it's too late. Their presence is already revealed. Gretel stares in shock. Johann in her room. How did he get there? Is he real or a ghost? Johann, slightly shy, breaks the tension. He admits he's finally made it. Decades may have passed since they last met, but he has been waiting for this day. Relief floods him. She is safe. But first she needs to put some clothes on. Gretel doesn't wait. In a flash, she delivers an uppercut, her so-called saint uppercut. Anger flares. Why did Johann come here? After everything she told him, after the warnings, why risk this? She reminds him bitterly that she told him to forget her. Gretel's anger boils over. She brings up the rumors, the whispers she's heard about the hero killer. A mysterious, demon-possessed figure targeting saints. Her voice shakes as she demands to know if it's Johann, if he made a pact after she was taken. She calls him an idiot, screaming that he must never do anything like this again for her sake. Johann goes silent for a beat. Then calmly he tells her she's misunderstanding something. Before she can react, he moves fast. He grabs her and carries her off, speaking with urgency. He claims he came for money, kidnapped the saint, rake in a ransom. He never fought to save her. Gretel freezes, disbelief written across her face. Johann turns to the senior exorcist, commanding him to use his art to render Gretel invisible as well. Without hesitation, the exorcist complies. Gretel glares, pointing out that he hasn't changed at all. She asks if it was all about money from the start. Johann laughs, unapologetic. Why else would he pick a fight with the church? He admits that once things get dangerous, he'll be running first, and she'll be bait. Gretel's eyes flash with fury. He lays out the plan. Once they retrieve the stupid girl, they'll slip out of the capital, head to the sea, and flee beyond the church's reach. She'll be safe. They'll find a remote place somewhere no pursuers can touch. And once the pact is paid, it will all end. But the moment is shattered. Crystals pierce through the senior exorcist's body. Johann and Gretel reel back in shock. From the shadows emerges a new figure. The unknown character taunts them, telling the hero killer he should have run while he had the chance. Before Johann can aim, a gesture from the man sends a barrage of crystals and gems tearing through Johann's body. He can't believe his eyes. Gemstones piercing through him like deadly shards. The man taunts him further, asking if he is still in loop 1. So this will be truly fun. Johann scans the area, confused. Was someone hiding nearby? When did they strike? He saw nothing. Gretel's eyes widen in recognition. The figure is the attendant. She shouts at Johann to run. The attacker's identity is revealed. A grand exorcist. Holy Seal Special Enforcement Office 4th rank. Exorcists were the church's holy warriors. Men and women trained to hunt down demons and cast them out. Through sacred relics bestowed by the church itself, they wielded anti-demonic arts known as exorcism. Ordinary soldiers received basic body enhancement through those relics. Senior troops, however, possessed unique abilities beyond simple reinforcement. But standing above all of them were the 9 grand exorcists. Each one carried a special relic personally granted by the pontiff. With those relics, they could unleash exorcism arts powerful enough to wage war against an entire nation. At that very moment, the grand exorcist unleashed another massive eruption of crystal from the ground. Jagged shards burst upward in an instant. Johann barely managed to dodge the attack. But something was wrong. His right side would no longer move. Nearby, Gretel cried out his name in panic. The grand exorcist looked at Johann with amusement. Even with a body already falling apart, Johann had still avoided the strike. Confused, Johann demanded answers. What exactly was this man? And what kind of exorcism art was he using? Inside his mind, Johann quickly assessed the situation. Running into a grand exorcist this early could only mean one thing. They had been ambushed. This was the absolute worst-case scenario. Worse still, the grand exorcist did not even seem interested in capturing him alive. Then, in the blink of an eye, the grand exorcist vanished. Instantly, he appeared in front of Johann and drove a devastating punch straight into his face. The impact launched Johann high into the sky. The grand exorcist coldly mocked him. Didn't Johann understand? He had already been gifted a gem. Flesh and stone had fused perfectly together. There was no going back now. The exorcist even joked that Johann would make for a beautiful crystal decoration someday. But before that, he planned to crush him into dust. Then, without hesitation, the grand exorcist leapt upward and delivered another brutal kick. As he attacked, the grand exorcist declared that Johann had killed the hero, the wing user. And as that hero's friend, he intended to avenge him personally. The assault did not stop there. Midair, the grand exorcist continued pounding Johann mercilessly. Blow after blow rained down without pause. He declared that he would kill Johann as many times as necessary. Johann could rewind all he wanted. It would not matter. And finally, the grand exorcist delivered one last crushing statement. Johann would never be taking the saint away. Then the execution came. Crystals and gemstones violently spread through Johann's body, piercing and consuming him from within. His life ended instantly. And once again, time rewound. Elsewhere, within the dead space, Johann leaned against a wall in frustration. He could not understand what was wrong with those exorcists. His head spun from the experience. He reflected on everything that had just happened. The sudden remote gemstone growth. The impossible speed. And worst of all, he still could not even tell how the grand exorcist had truly killed him. Mephi calmly pointed out that the grand exorcist had acted recklessly. Exorcists were supposed to capture the sovereign alive. Instead, the man had simply toyed with Johann. She further explained that rewinding changed nothing for the exorcists. No matter how many times the world reset, they would never retain any memory of it. Johann still found the situation disturbing. If the grand exorcist was willing to push this far, then either he was dangerously reckless or simply playing around. Either way, the man possessed absolute confidence that his exorcism art would kill Johann every single time. Then Mephi revealed something important. This was an opportunity. Whatever the grand exorcist's exorcism art truly was, it relied on one principle. You can't attack what you can't see. Johann immediately responded with his own realization. You can't kill what you can't see? Mephi smiled faintly before answering. Unless your enemy is us. Johann rewound time once again. This time, events returned to the moment after he had already taken Gretel alongside the chameleon-like man. But unlike before, Johann made a different decision. He stayed completely invisible and chose to flee immediately. As they moved, Johann reflected on his earlier mistake. Talking to Gretel had exposed them. If he had known the exorcists were already closing in, he never would have disabled stealth mode in the first place. Then suddenly, as the group landed on the ground, a heavy thud echoed through the area. Nearby guards immediately heard the impact and stopped in confusion, wondering what had made that sound. Still, Johann and the others kept running. Inside his mind, Johann calculated their chances. If they could just reach the island's edge and steal a boat, they could escape. Once they were out at sea, the exorcists should no longer be able to touch them. But while sprinting forward, all three of them suddenly froze. Johann's eyes widened in shock. Their invisibility had broken. The nearby guards instantly spotted them. Within seconds, the soldiers recognized Johann as the hero killer and the other man as Enforcer Leon. Johann immediately stopped and tried to understand what had happened. He turned toward the chameleon-like man and demanded an explanation. The man answered with disbelief in his voice. His relic was gone. Without it, he could no longer use exorcism. Johann's mind raced. Had they been monitored from the very beginning? But more importantly, how had the chameleon's relic disappeared without anyone noticing? Then disaster struck. Out of nowhere, a car slammed into Johann, Gretel, and the chameleon man from behind with overwhelming force. The Grand Exorcist casually stepped out from the vehicle. Almost playfully, he announced that since they were already there, he decided to try killing Johann with simple roadkill this time. Then the Grand Exorcist calmly asked for confirmation. Were they currently on loop 2? He admitted that Johann's retreat had been clean. But even so, he had smelled Johann's panic. At that moment, Johann finally realized the truth. The Grand Exorcist had already stolen the chameleon's relic. Then, without warning, the Grand Exorcist flicked a metal object forward. The projectile pierced directly through Johann's eye and into his skull. Instant death. As Johann's vision faded, the Grand Exorcist casually wished him good luck next time. Once again, Johann awakened within the dead space. Mephi quietly observed that the Grand Exorcist's ability was not limited to embedding gems into targets. Johann tried to piece everything together. Where had that car even come from? The Grand Exorcist had stolen the chameleon's relic instantly and silently before ever revealing himself. An ability to remotely summon objects. That much made sense. Gems, cars, even relics. If those objects existed within the Grand Exorcist's summoning range, then the theory fit perfectly. But Johann knew there had to be more to it than that. How could the man move with such impossible speed? And earlier, that attack had not felt like a thrown weapon at all. It had felt more like the transformation of a relic itself. Exorcists were only capable of possessing 2 innate arts at most. If everything they had witnessed so far was merely one aspect of the Grand Exorcist's power, then that left only one terrifying possibility. Suddenly, Johann realized something so unsettling that even he froze. No way. And at that exact moment, time rewound yet again, returning him to the point where he still had Gretel beside him. Mephi then explained the harsh reality. Regardless of the resets, they would remain trapped until they dealt with the Grand Exorcist directly. The reason the Grand Exorcist uncovered their betrayals so quickly was simple. He had been watching the saint inside the room the entire time. Even if he could not physically see Johann's invisible group, he still noticed the exact moment the saint vanished. That alone was enough for him to detect the anomaly. And once he noticed it, he could arrive almost instantly. With a Grand Exorcist like that in play, escape became impossible. No matter how many times Johann rewound the timeline, they would never successfully extract Gretel. This time, Johann decided to take a far more desperate approach. He secretly planted a bomb inside Gretel's room. Then, without hesitation, he pressed the remote trigger. A violent explosion erupted from inside the chamber. But high above the scene, the Grand Exorcist simply laughed. Rather than anger, Johann's plan seemed to amuse him. The Grand Exorcist openly admitted that the strategy was not bad at all. Then, in the next instant, he lunged downward. A brutal kick slammed directly into Johann's chest and sent him flying across the area. While Johann struggled to recover, the Grand Exorcist casually asked for confirmation. Was this already loop 3? Johann immediately realized something terrifying. The Grand Exorcist had completely avoided the explosion without effort. The man continued mocking him, almost entertained by Johann's determination. Johann had such impressive murderous intent, and yet he still kept dying in pathetic ways. Then the Grand Exorcist grinned and offered Johann something new. How about a stylish death this time? The Grand Exorcist flexed his metallic prosthetic arm. Immediately, the relic activated. Blood Vow Armament. Sky-devouring Great Wing Arm. The armament shifted forms instantly. Its structure transformed and expanded outward into an extension-type weapon. Then, from a massive distance away, the giant arm shot directly toward Johann. Johann's eyes widened in realization. The prosthetic itself was the Grand Exorcist's relic, and it could extend over incredible distances. But what disturbed Johann even more was the destruction left behind. Everything the arm touched simply disappeared. Forests vanished. Buildings vanished. Entire sections of terrain were erased as if they had never existed at all. At that moment, Johann finally remembered the terrifying stories surrounding the Grand Exorcists. These were not ordinary warriors. They were monsters surrounded by endless legends. Some rewrote entire landscapes, including the bedrock itself. Others burned enemies hundreds of kilometers away. Some could even hurl hundreds of tons of rubble beyond the horizon. And now, piece by piece, Johann finally connected everything he had witnessed. The summoned objects. The impossible speed. The way the Grand Exorcist seems to disappear and instantly reappear elsewhere. Put together, the answer became obvious. It was teleportation. The Grand Exorcist was not merely moving quickly. He was relocating instantly. That realization crushed Johann's confidence even further. If the Grand Exorcist truly wanted to, he could imprison Johann inside a cell in the blink of an eye. That was why the man had spent all this time playing with him instead of ending things immediately. Even after disguising himself as the Chameleon Man, Johann still could not see any path toward victory. Frustration slowly consumed him. What exactly was he supposed to do against an ability this unfair? But before Johann could even settle on an answer, he was caught once again. The Grand Exorcist suddenly appeared directly in front of him. Then, with clear amusement in his voice, the man praised him mockingly. Sneaking all the way out of the castle, not bad at all. Johann immediately opened fire on the Grand Exorcist. But before the bullet could even connect, the Grand Exorcist vanished. In the next instant, he had already teleported behind Johann. The man casually mocked him, wondering aloud whether this was already loop 4, or maybe even 5. Johann fired again. But once more, the Grand Exorcist avoided the shot effortlessly. Desperate, he began firing wildly in every direction. Yet no matter where Johann aimed, the Grand Exorcist evaded every single bullet with ease. Almost amused, swapping clothes with Leon beforehand had actually worked for a moment. Johann had successfully fooled both the guards and the Grand Exorcist men. Because of that deception, the Grand Exorcist admitted he had been forced to take an unnecessary detour. Still, in the end, everything had been resolved almost instantly. The Grand Exorcist then asked the real question. Where was the saint? If Johann and Gretel had separated in order to escape independently, then Johann had better reunite with her quickly. After all, the saint would never be capable of escaping the island alone. Then suddenly, a gunshot rang out. The bullet struck directly through the Grand Exorcist's head. At the very same moment, Johann stood there with his gun still raised toward him. But despite taking a direct shot to the head, the Grand Exorcist remained completely alive. In fact, he calmly complimented Johann's aim. Johann stared in frustration. The shot had landed perfectly, yet it had barely done any damage at all. The situation had officially become hopeless. Then the Grand Exorcist lunged forward instantly. With a grin, he congratulated Johann. He had just won himself a personal tour of the dungeon. Teleportation, exorcism truly was monstrous. Back within the dead space, Mephi began analyzing the Grand Exorcist's abilities. So far, she had confirmed 3 separate powers. Self-teleportation, the remote summoning of specific objects, and finally, the ability to transfer anything the Grand Exorcist physically touched. But among all of them, the transferability was by far the worst. She asked Johann if he agreed. Johann quietly answered yes. Even without complete proof, he was already certain of it. If the Grand Exorcist truly wanted to, he could instantly close the distance at top speed, grab Johann, and dump him inside a prison cell in the shortest possible route imaginable. At any moment. Mephi then explained why that possibility terrified her so much. If she were ever locked inside a cell, it would mean complete game over. Every possible method of suicide would be sealed away. She would be kept alive no matter what, all the way until the day of the offering. Then Mephi asked Johann if he truly understood what that meant. Because the real problem was even worse than imprisonment. If the saint died, or if the saint were successfully offered as a sacrifice, then Johann would permanently lose the ability to save her. The contract between Johann and Mephi would immediately terminate. A month earlier, the two of them had formed their pact under one absolute condition: rescue the saint. That was the foundation of their agreement. Whenever someone formed a contract with a demon and became possessed, a strict condition had to be established. That condition served as the absolute rule governing the pact itself. It determined either its expiration or its termination. For example, someone could establish a simple condition such as 1 year. During that year, they would possess the demon's power. Once the time limit expired, however, the possession would end unless the contract was renewed. But Johann's pact worked differently. There was no renewal clause. If the offering ceremony happened, or if the target died, then the pact would forcibly terminate immediately. Mephi would search for a new contractor and disappear from Johann forever. Those were the rules both Johann and Mephi had personally negotiated and agreed upon together. Neither side could break them, which meant Johann only had one chance. If he failed even once, if he ended up trapped inside a prison cell alone, then there would be no more rewinds, no more retries. Only the final price waiting for him at the end: real ruin. And after realizing that truth, Johann hardened his resolve. He absolutely could not allow that to happen. Mephi then pointed out the one advantage they still possessed. Conversely, all she had to do was avoid being teleported into a prison cell. That alone kept their chances alive. She explained that the Grand Exorcist's arrogance was becoming their biggest opportunity. The man was overconfident, careless, and because of that, Mephi believed there was still plenty of room for them to kill him instead. Teleportation did not make someone invincible. If she could land even a single proper hit, that would be enough. So Mephi instructed Johann to continue keeping the Grand Exorcist entertained. They could not pressure him too quickly or force him into caution. Johann simply needed to keep fighting, keep dying, and keep repeating the loops until Mephi found a guaranteed kill route. Eventually, she promised she would find an opening. As long as the Grand Exorcist continued to toy with them in the dark like an idiot, they still had a chance. The Grand Exorcist was playing around with their lives. So now, Johann and Mephi intended to make him pay the price for it. The moment the Grand Exorcist attempted to capture him, Johann immediately pulled the trigger and shot himself through the head. Instantly, the sealed watch activated, and once again, they returned to the dead space. Mephi admitted that had been dangerously close. Johann let out a breath and answered that it was a good thing he had already prepared himself to die at any second. The Grand Exorcist had clearly attempted to send him directly into a prison cell that time. Mephi then warned him not to waste bullets carelessly anymore. If they truly wanted to kill the Grand Exorcist in a single strike, then explosives were their best option. Just like what they had done against the Windmaker before. Johann quickly understood the objective. Somehow, he needed to force the Grand Exorcist into close range before detonating a bomb. And so, they rewound once more, returning to the middle of the shootout. Gunfire echoed through the battlefield again as Johann repeatedly fired at the Grand Exorcist. Naturally, every shot was dodged with ease. But this time, Johann quietly prepared a bag filled with explosives. The Grand Exorcist watched him with a mocking smile and casually asked what was wrong. Then Johann suddenly hurled the bag directly toward him. The Grand Exorcist almost laughed at the attempt. Did Johann seriously think he could land a thrown bomb on him? After all, bullets themselves could not even touch him. Then, almost casually, the Grand Exorcist flicked a knife forward. The blade pierced directly into Johann's forehead. As death approached once again, Johann cursed the man in frustration. Not yet, you sadistic rich son of a bitch. Then, inside his mind, Johann fully accepted the reality before him. If that was how the Grand Exorcist wanted to play this game, then Johann would simply keep running it back over and over again, no matter how many deaths it took. And so the loops continued. The 14th attempt, the 21st, the 37th, even the 50th rewind. Still, Johann continued fighting. Up until loop 50, the strategy itself barely changed. Separate the teleporter from Gretel. Use gunfire as bait. Then destroy him with explosives at close range. A brutally simple plan. But eventually, Johann introduced one major adjustment. This time, he brought Leon with him alive. It had taken dozens of repeated attempts just to keep everyone together long enough to reach the forest. Johann burned through massive amounts of ammunition making it happen. But none of that mattered anymore. Because the lure had finally been prepared. Nearby, hidden beside a tree, rested an invisible bag packed with bombs. Quietly waiting for the Grand Exorcist to approach. Johann stared at him confidently. Right beside the Grand Exorcist sat an invisible bomb. This time, Johann truly believed he had won. There was no possible way for the Grand Exorcist to dodge the blast. Then Johann openly mocked him. The Grand Exorcist should have abandoned these games from the start and simply thrown him into a prison cell immediately. Pride and complacency were always the greatest weaknesses of powerful men. Now it was time for the Grand Exorcist to pay for everything he had done. Time to drown in a sea of blood and regret. And with that, Johann pressed the detonator. But in the very same instant, the Grand Exorcist teleported directly behind him. Then he touched Johann, and instantly, Johann vanished. In the blink of an eye, he was teleported straight into a prison cell. The Grand Exorcist calmly looked at him and spoke with amusement. Johann really thought the solution was simply avoiding teleportation into a cell?